Yes! Guys are like, what? What? Yes! So that's actually for my mate. That's for my boy Owen, a boy that I work for, Owen Hunter. I was saying to him, look, I'm going to do yes. And he was like to me today, yes! I was like, do you know what? I'm going to add that to the podcast. So he'll love that. Absolutely love that. I'm with today. I'm with today a good personal friend of mine, great personal friend of mine. A guy that was a manager for me, but we became pals because I never done what I was told, kind of thing.
And I was a rubbish manager.
And we used to work for this leaflet company. Right,
Alien
delivery company.
Delivery business.
But I've been pals with Brian, so it's Brian Mitchell. Welcome to Green Sunrise.
Thank you very much.
I've been down to get you on for ages.
I've been begging to go on.
You've been begging to come on for ages. A guy who was a neighbour to me years ago when I stayed in Springburn. With my boy Aidan and his mum Sarah, we stayed there. This guy across the road from us kept banging the door. Look, I've got something to tell you. We'll talk about this during the podcast. Brother Joseph.
Please say
brother, music impresario. We're talking to that today. Music impresario.
Yes.
Yes. Oh no, yes. And finally, a multi-award winning Scottish author, David Keenan. Welcome to Green Sunrise, mate.
So psyched to be here. Thank you so much.
Thank you for
and musician as well.
And musician as well.
Ex-musician. Right, yeah, I'll take that.
No, ex-musician, but Scottish author, David Keenan. Thank you so much, and thank you to Joe again for organising this.
No problem.
And again, look, thank you for Brian for being here, mate.
I'm only here because of the two legends sat in front of me. I take that back.
I can't go that is. So Brian, you back? Who's on this week? Well, it's me, you, and he's like, nah. And then Joe was coming on it, and obviously David Keenan came on.
It was a good conversation we had in the local, in the local
public area. So it was good.
A part two of it, you know what I mean?
So this is a massive part two. Mm-hmm. But today, do you know what? Let's get down to business, right?
Yeah.
Brian, let's kick off with you, mate. How you doing?
I am doing absolutely tremendous. Psyched to be here. That's a great word, as you would imagine, for an author.
Yes.
You know, I've got lots of things to obviously ask both gentlemen, especially David, because I'm a big fan of his books, especially For the Good Times, which I've described it as Trainspotting meets the Troubles. I would love somebody just to create that book into a film. I don't know, it's just got all the material, all the makings for it.
Yep.
And Joseph, what can I say? I know you deal with mental health, Paul.
Aye.
And, you know, anybody that wants to have a conversation with Joe in a local pub, their mental health is just fun. After it's so restored, it's wonderful.
Yeah, thanks.
And a local celebrity where I come from as well, in the north of Glasgow.
Thank you.
And your music is really interesting. I was actually listening to it today, you know, and you really need to promote that this evening because it's certainly well worth a listen to.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think thanks for that. It's nice. First of all, it's nice to meet and talk and be social in pubs. I guess we are all kind of social anyway. We're socialites, aren't we? You know, but sometimes you just go up the road and you know you kind of go right. But it's nice to hear that you know if your words can actually get through and work into people as well. You know what I mean? Is you know and sharing just you know sharing stories, isn't it? You know what I mean? Sharing stories of good chat and like music, football, anything like that. You know what I mean? But kind of getting things off your chest.
Aye.
Yep.
You know.
Aye. The reason I started Green Sunrise podcast was about connecting people, right, through any circumstance. But it kicked off with, well, obviously I was doing suicide prevention for a charity in Glasgow, and I was talking to guys constantly, but I was realising that it wasn't just guys, there was females as well, because everybody's attached and everybody's connected. And I thought, you know what, let's do this podcast and let's start with people that I know. Let's get people in that I know. Let's talk to them. Let's have conversations about golden gems that we all have and healthy mental health, if you like. And when I've met, obviously I met you and Brian and now David's books, I just bought the same book as yourself. And I was halfway through it and I'm like, this is a brilliant book. I'm just getting involved in this story, this world, right? Yeah. And then I realised, I was doing some podcast stuff, looking at all the podcasts that you've done. And it's actually a book based on your family. You've based it on family members, like your dad and your uncles.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, my dad grew up in Arddoyne along with his brothers during the Troubles, but my dad left, so he moved to Airdrie, but the rest of the family stayed. So the Troubles was the entire backdrop to my childhood in so many ways. We had so many family that were involved in it. We'd have phone calls or reports, or often people would want to escape from Belfast for a little bit, would come over and stay in the family house and stuff like that. And my dad was illiterate. My dad couldn't read or write, and neither could any of his brothers. But they had the most amazing command of language. The way these guys told a story was unbelievable. And even though they were illiterate, they had a deep faith in language. They had a faith that language was redemptive, that telling a story could redeem even suffering, even difficult things. So they would tell you some horrific, mad thing that had happened to one of the family in Belfast, and they would be pissing themselves laughing when they were describing it. And it's almost a competition for who could tell the story in the best way, the funniest way. And if you could only just do that, you'd somehow redeem the entire situation. And so I would listen with these guys. I'd sometimes get locked in with them in the loft, and they all looked amazing. They all had suits on and big rings, and I'd look up to all these guys, you know what I mean? And I said to myself, you know what, one day I'm going to write a book that captures the incredible language and the resilience and actual bravery of these young men, you know? So I took a vow then that I would do that, and eventually it became my second novel, For the Good Times.
Yep.
Sorry to interrupt. That reminds me of, you're talking about, you know, how that dark humour, and there's a lot of dark humour in your stuff, which I love. But I think I got that at an early age, because I remember only being, you know, so little that I can't even remember whose funeral it was, but I just remember everybody was just getting absolutely steaming, having a great time, right? And my granny Mullen, God rest her, saying at the time, I've been to some brilliant funerals, but this is a cracker.
That's brilliant. That was very like when my dad died. My dad died in 2013, and all the family. My mum was a Protestant. My father was a Catholic, and so all the family from Ireland came over, and it was wild. It was like that. Song Body of an American by the Pogues. It describes it. It's exactly 100% accurate to that. Was like, and you could see it was getting to my mum a wee bit. And at one point she just walked in the room and she said, I think you are all having still a little bit too much fun for a funeral.
We were at Uncle Joe's funeral, Joe Laughlin's, and it was held in the Wintergills, you know, the Wintergills.
I love it.
So we all went down there, and we were at the crematorium up Lamb Hill first. And is that as well? I don't know if we used, but aunties and uncles stayed to the old parties we used to go to. We spoke about this. They all used to have a song, you know, and you done a turn at a party, you know. And Big Joe, he was Blueberry Hill, Fats Domino. That was his song. So we went into the crematorium, and in the background is like, and it sort of kind of went, right, and it just went, everybody went, I found my thrill. Right, everybody all starts singing this in the crematorium, right? But see, they'll get to that point as you're saying there. We went down to the Wintergills after it, and Yvonne, his daughter, she'd worked through Wintergills and Chevrons and that as well. So she kept the sort, I don't know if it seemed as though it was like a back room at the time, right? And so we're in there, my wee Uncle Danny, his party piece was the kids' last fight. Okay, come on, kid, let's head on with the left. So he would get up and he would have command the whole floor, right? And I remember I went through at the bar, and I was standing at the bar, and I went like that, and somebody went, some party in there, is it somebody's leaving do, or is it like that? I went, no, it's my Uncle Joe's funeral. It
was a leaving do.
So I put a smile on it, you know what I mean? I suppose, you know.
But the thing about, you know, the mental health and what, you know, this is great for me to, you know, guys like yourself, is the great thing for me about mental health, and why I like, you know, we became so close, Paul, is, you know, work can be very difficult, whatever job you're in, the mundane and everything else, but you were a great character and a great worker. But I could see very early on that you took time, you were always interested in how people were doing, how people were feeling, you know, you were, you know, really personable, but you also took an interest in people's lives. And if there was somebody sat in a corner and they were having a bad day or whatever, and you've just progressed that and you've just grown that. Now, for me, you know, reading your books, listening to, you know, your music, that's where I get my escapism, you know, when I, you know, having that time in a pub. But, you know, I love reading, and especially at music, because it's all about imagination. There's a song there, isn't there? But, and I think that's where the three yous, you know, should win awards for, because from that mental health perspective, you know, we're talking about funerals. I mean, my mother passed away 3 years ago, you know, sad event, but it's about, you know, whenever we sit down and talk, we don't talk about how sad we were. We talk about her party piece was, "Oh, you still love me tomorrow."
Right, yeah.
And she loved our Motown, and she loved, you know, everything.
Yeah, it makes me think of there's a great quote. In fact, it's quite poignant today because it's 3 years to the day since Andrew Weatherall died. And I gave one of the speeches at his funeral. And one of the things I said was, I remembered when Jack Kerouac, the writer, died, Allen Ginsberg gave a speech at his grave. And one of the things he said, he looks around all the mourners and everyone's crying. And he says, he makes a beautiful point. He says, we're not crying for the triumph of death. We're crying for the triumph of life. We're crying because life is so absolutely beautiful and incredible. This is not the triumph of death, it's a triumph of life when we cry at these funerals. I thought that was really profound. And it was interesting, Andrew was an incredible person. I mean, the reason me and Joe know each other is through Andrew, which is weird that we're here today on the anniversary. We met on a plane on the way to Carcassonne in the south of France for Andrew's Convenanza Festival. And I believe that Joseph's opening gambit with me was, I was sitting next to him, and I had my rings, he turns around to me and he says, "Are those Weatherall rings?" I was like,
"You're going to Weatherall Festival?"
Well, I was like, "You know Weatherall?" He was like, that was that. And then from that day, we kind of never really spoke about it, but we ended up DJing at the next Convenanza together, just a complete fluke almost. 3 years later when we came back, we DJed together, and that's how we naturally just feel together now, where we did a double DJ thing, and we have the radio show and stuff like that. It all came through Andrew Weatherall.
Basically,
jeez.
If it wasn't that, we would have been on that flight going there.
No, we wouldn't have, and this is the anniversary today. I mean, it's absolutely uncanny.
The big question's got to be then is, why are we not sitting in the south of France?
We'll make that for
That's a thing of beauty. It was
stunning.
And the thing is, as well, it's the first time I'd been, because Andrew was always harping on it, and phone us up out the blue, and you know, and obviously I'm a plumber, you know, so I'm plumbing, and the phone would go and I'd be like, "Oh, it's Andrew, right? He's Brother Joseph, what you up to? You know, like try and go over, you know." I'd be like, "Can't you just in the middle of a heating job, you know? Can't you just drop everything and go?" Because I'd take a wee Joe with me, but you know, it'd still be in the middle of things. Can't you just go?
No.
And but I planned that one to go, and that was like, I'm definitely going, you know. And me and Claire sat down on the flight, and I'm in the middle, he's in the window. Claire's there, and I'm like, I'm just kind of looking, I went, "Oh, this geezer here," you know what I mean? He likes something else. Like, looking, checking the fingers, checking the rings, and I'm like, "Right, okay, right." So this is going to be.
So that's how you met.
I think everybody else in the plane was all like that, looking there, going, you know. And I was like, "All right, mate, all right, how you doing? I'm Joe, how are you?" He's like, "What's your name?" He's like, "I'm David." Hey, right, how you doing? And we go chatting. And just talking that flight, wasn't it? It was just like a good laugh.
The whole trip was magical. Another thing I always remember about Andrew, which is really, really special, is so we're staying at a Hotel de la City. It's maybe one of the most beautiful hotels I've ever stayed in my life. It's on a cliff, it's overlooking the whole of the city. It's in the walled part of it. And me and Andrew and my editor, Lee Braxton, were sitting in the garden, like drinking. We were drinking a glass of wine or something. And Andrew's always got these weird, interesting pop cultural facts. And he says to me, "Do you know the guy, your man Dave Stewart for the Eurythmics?" He was like, he suffered from a thing called paradise syndrome. That he could never get to the point where his life was perfect. He always thought, it's not for me, or I can't see it. There was always a problem with it. This paradise, I'd never heard of this paradise syndrome.
I did that myself.
So Andrew looks around this beautiful, beautiful location, and he says to me, "I'll tell you one thing, I've never suffered from that for a second in my life." And it occurred to me that Andrew saw paradise right at that minute. He knew how beautiful the moment was as it was passing. A lot of people can't see that, but I get a shiver up my spine that moment. Andrew knew how significant and beautiful that moment is. And of course, that was the last time I was ever together with Andrew. But he saw the significance of it in the moment. What a skill. What a thing to be able to say. You know?
That's what one of his
incredible,
one of his last few texts that he'd sent me, and I think I'd messaged him. It was like I was driving back from Dundee, and we're heading west, and the sun was kind of going down. It was maybe September or something like that, you know, and it was this fiery sky, and I just it must have been listening to some beautiful tune or whatever it was, and I'd said to him, but that's us heading west homewards, you know what I mean, right? You know, away from the east, heading west homewards, and he was, I remember him saying, he said like, thanks for sharing that beautiful moment, whatever it was, and to quote James Luther Dickinson, take reassurance in the glory of the moment and the forever promise of tomorrow. And that was a text he'd sent us, you know, and I was like, fuck, you know.
Tell me that again.
Take reassurance in the glory of the moment and the forever promise of tomorrow.
Wow.
That's amazing.
That's beautiful.
See if that's serenity in your life as well. Just...
But Andrew had this kind of, I mean, it's no exaggeration to say this sort of shamanistic kind of ability, and he saw himself as a DJ more as a sort of the leader of the ritual, in a way, you know what I mean?
Yep. Aye. It's funny this, because I'm doing the DJing just now, for a wedding, I'm doing working for a wedding DJ guy. Beyond Entertainments.
What's that?
Beyond Entertainment. That's for you, Stevie. Stevie Black.
Big t-shirt.
Good guy. Because Brian's got a plug as well for him and Stephen have just met. And it's funny, but that's another story. We'll talk about that soon. But yeah, the DJing. So where did the DJing kick off? Where did you meet?
What happened was it was at Carcassonne again. We went back there in September. Because obviously after that one, we were at David was doing like book readings through White Rabbit Books and stuff. Obviously with COVID and stuff, everything was it. So it's, the first festival again was September there, since 2019 it would have been. So we were there. We were there. When I'd seen you that time in the car, you know, I'll no repeat on it. Can we swear? No, I don't.
Aye.
Well, just me and Claire have checked in. He says, I'll be there on the Thursday. And we're... Was it David? Anyway, we'll leave it.
I got into trouble for the rest of the people in the car, actually. He said, you shouldn't be shouting like that in Carcassonne. It's not...
Brother,
it's just not classy.
Motherfucker.
But I was like, it's not so keep it real.
I was like, Claire, who's that? I'm like, right, then he said, he's like, oh, it's fucking the brothers here, Keenan's here. But anyway, I was, Bernie, who runs it, had asked me, once I go over there, I'd train some USB sticks if I would play at Baravine, which is one of the bars in there, a lot of them all play in. So it was a Saturday afternoon to play like between 3 and 5. And David hooked David up, me and him were playing together.
Right.
So, and I didn't really know that.
It wasn't even clear to me. I mean, Bernie said to me, can you do a DJ set as part in the afternoon? And he'd also said to Joseph, but that's all he'd said. So I turned up, Joseph is DJing. Well, immediately, we just got to do a B2B. We should just do it back to back. So we just immediately launched in it, and I'm not kidding you. About an hour and a half later, the entire bar was dancing. The entire bar was just, it was kicking off. It was amazing.
The two poor guys that were DJing behind us, they were just like, keep it going.
And the two DJs were like dancing behind us, saying, you just keep going. It was wild.
So I think it was meant to be from 3 to 5. It went to 3 to 7, wasn't it?
Yeah. What do you when you are doing a set? What do you actually do?
We've really only kind of started playing. Really, that was the first live
set.
We really just throw ourselves in, don't we?
Yep. To be honest, there's been no discussion about it whatsoever. I was saying this to Joseph the other day. It felt so natural and organic. We just sort of did it. We didn't say, should we DJ together? Should we do a show? What sort of music should we play? And in fact, when we DJ, we have no discussion about what we're going to play. We make no decisions beforehand. And the first record starts and the next person needs to respond to that in real time. And then we roll with that. There's no...
That's amazing.
That's how it goes.
It's really exciting.
It's really exciting because when Stevie goes that to me, Stevie lets me do the first hour, right? And I'm doing the first hour, but it's all obviously stuff. There's a big list of stuff there he's going to play that's on the list, stuff that you can't play as well. And then you're like, right, so I play this list. I'm like, I'll just start playing that. And then Steve's like, no, you can't play that. And then I realise, it's actually a wedding because there's different type of music. Exactly, weddings, you know what I mean? No, I'm going to the next one. So it's good to get that direction. It was never on my list of things to do, become a wedding DJ. But now I'm doing it. I absolutely love it. I love watching him, how it all kicks off and just going from one to the other.
Does he play a lot of modern stuff? Or
he plays anything. He plays everything. So he'll play the classic wedding stuff, right, that we all pass for. He'll have a list of must plays from the actual couple,
Right.
and then
Aye,
obviously
right, okay.
a list of do not plays. Usually football songs never play football songs.
Aye, especially the rest of Scotland.
Especially the rest of Scotland,
No chance.
because that can kick off. You know what I mean? It's like, and it's not that sometimes unless a couple ask for it. Like that.
They might well heard people.
I remember I was out in Paisley or Renfrew, and it was we used to always go. It was like the week before Christmas, my man and dad's anniversary, and there was this couple that would play. And they'd always go down the Carpenters Road, right? But it was like, see, who's the last that's on Chewing the Fat and
Karen the Bar.
Karen the Bar, right? She does a thing at the end of her shows, and it's like it's her and her man. It's like she's like cabaret singers,
Right.
And he's got the keyboard, right? It's a bit kind of like. Hey, c'est la vie, c'est la va, c'est la vie, c'est la vendo, things like that. But anyway, they're playing quite a thing, you know. And next thing, Simply the Best, just gets played, and she's singing it. So right away, that's it. And the floor's divided. You know what I mean? You're the rest of Scotland here, totally divided, right? So I put up and I went, any chance I did, you'll never walk alone. She went, oh, we don't do football songs. I was like, all right, okay. Who's that?
And it's not that, it's a beautiful song.
That's it, aye, but you could just tell right away, like how people just went, I'm not. You know what I mean? So it's, you know, don't bring it into it.
No,
Sense,
exactly.
so,
So
I mean, you know?
I've always been really envious of the DJ thing. I went to school where knew a boy in my scheme that didn't go to school with him, he went to other school. He was a fantastic DJ, became a fantastic DJ. And I've always been so envious, and I've had my wee go. But you'll know better than me. But I remember, who was it? Calvin Harris, if he got his USB stick or something.
Right. That's that urban myth that he had to cancel his world tour because he lost his USB stick. I think it's an urban myth, like to sort of rip the piss out how easy it is for some DJ. All you do is turn up with a USB stick.
All you need to go down to shops, buy a new USB,
That's just the thing, it's
and get
not
onto somebody's on say maybe
you would need to transfer the sort. I know.
I could go into you could go into.
I'm pretty confident Calvin Harris could figure that out. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly. You know, you would have a backup maybe.
Just play Dua Lipa.
Right, see, I used to put on like David Jude had done it selling it, but I used to put on like garage punk bands and stuff like that in Woodlands Road, the Halt Bar. And I seen one night, I remember coming out, sitting on my box of records, and like I didn't even know why a full box of records. I don't even know if I played or no, you know what I mean? I was too busy worrying about the bands, but sat on them, then jumped up to get a taxi, and then get him the taxi and went, where's my records? You know what I mean?
Really?
Luckily found them and that, but
you
just
got
things
them
like that.
Lucky
Aye. So, you know, there's a lot of DJs I know. I think the USB thing, that must be, it's great now. You could actually travel from here to there with a full collection inside your pocket.
Yeah, I think it's cool. I mean, one of the things I hated about being in a band was like carrying equipment around. I hated doing sound checks. I hated amps. I hated all that crap. The great thing about being a DJ is you can turn up with just hand luggage, and I love that. And I mean, to be honest, I have no DJ skills whatsoever. I'm starting for the very, very basics. But you know what I mean? But I love it. I absolutely love it. I get a total thrill. I think it's really creative, and I've been lucky to see really great DJs, and the artistry of it's amazing. I mean, I'm a huge fan of David Holmes, and when you see David Holmes DJing, it's just like, it is absolute artistry. Total artistry.
Love it. They get right in amongst it.
And the way that Andrew could play a whole room, it's magic. It's absolute magic.
I must admit, the guy, my mate Steve Bennett, man, I just think he's amazing. I think he's brilliant at what he does. I love how he goes from one to the next, right? But it's just the timing that they've got, and it's just, see when they hit it on the beat, the beat,
when you drop it, it's just
when
there's no better feeling, man.
Oh, it's brilliant. So I'm trying.
You do a bit of the mic then, Paul, or what do you do?
Well, he does most of the mic.
Yeah.
He did say to me like months ago, he said, I'll give you a mic.
You're
we'll have a
confident.
mic. I'm most confident. But now because a different. You can't go in. I'm talking about today's mental health. It's
Yeah,
like what you do if you're have you done your star jumps today? And I probably could use that way, to be fair. But have you done your star jumps today? That would probably
Somebody put the buffet on.
That used to annoy me so much about your mind. I'd be like him, right, Moon, you need to start, and I'd try to get up to work, and he'd be doing star jumps and all that, and he'd be doing all these squats and stuff, and I'm like, what are you doing? Is what have you done here, pal? No, you know.
I was done, Brian. It was brilliant because
and it didn't get done, to be fair, but I was like, what are you doing?
I must admit, but see when I'm really, see if I feel like a low ebb, the last thing I really want is music. It really is, because I don't want it to be tarnished by the way I'm feeling. In a lot of ways.
That's interesting.
I remember years ago when I went into town, I was feeling dead that way. I really just needed to spew, that was all. I was a wee guy. I wasn't through drink or anything like that, right?
No.
I was just like feeling pretty ill, it was like a fever or something.
You sure you
and
weren't
I bought an album, The Damned Live at Shepperton, right? 1980.
Yeah.
And I got up the road, and as soon as I got in the house, I just went, right, spewed all over the place, right in my bed. Got up the next day, felt like shit, and every time I look at that record, it just reminds me.
Really?
Of that. It's just totally
Even
reminds
to this day,
me.
so has it
reminds me
ruined
of
that
the
record?
carpet. It reminds me of the furniture in the living room,
God.
everything.
That's rough.
And it reminds me of the spew. And I was just like, I can't do it.
See, before I'm like that with whiskey.
That's whiskey.
I got drunk when I was 15. I bought a Grant's. Me and my pal John McLean, we decided, I don't know where we
John
go, I
McLean?
really don't. Right, we'll get that a bash. And mugs of tea, we were just putting in tea mugs and just rattling it straight.
Oh, no.
And
Did it ruin you for life?
I just smell whiskey now.
Aye, you can't.
Honestly, my vodka's like that with me. We get a bottle of vodka I tell you, it was 1987 or something like that for supporters bus, the Melbourne, and you get a bottle of whiskey or a bottle of vodka, I get a bottle of vodka, and we were pouring it into cans of Tennent's going up to Students' Union at the time, and I just remember my phone on the floor, and my mates crowding all around me, and I walked at home in the snow that night, and vodka is just a no. That's
Usually when I go for nights out in the West End, it's usually I walk up, I can see is going up the road, can I get a taxi, walking up the road, and one time that happened to me, I was in the snow, and I was walking up the road for the West End, because you can't get taxis now. Do you know what I mean?
You really can.
You can't get taxis.
Really can.
brutal.
It's just
Round the corner's
brutal.
one of the worst places coming out of that. The Berkeley or anything like that as well.
Aye,
Try to get a taxi, even though you're right on Sauchiehall Street. Nightmare. But
I suppose it depends on what time.
So what you guys get planned next then?
Aye,
Especially yourself, any books in the pipeline?
Yeah, I've got a new novel coming out. This year's the first year in like 6 years, I think, I've not published a new novel. I've got a couple of paperbacks coming out. I've got the paperback Industry and Magic and Light, which was my last book, which is a sort of prequel to This' Memorial Device. It's set in Airdrie, but in the 1960s. And it's about a group of people that run a psychedelic light show. And somehow the psychedelic light show transforms Airdrie into like a magical town. So that was my most recent one. So that's out in paperback later. And then next year, April 24th, I've got my new book coming out again. And it's kind of like, it's my 7th novel. And I feel like it's kind of the final novel in a cycle that started with my Memorial Device. So I don't know where I'm going to go after this. So maybe into non-fiction or something like that for a little bit and back to it. But it feels like the closing of a circle somehow. So that's really the next thing with me.
I need to ask you, right? So we're talking about the Gordon Burns Prize.
Yep.
2019.
Yep, that's
Explain
right.
how is that? Is that because you thought it was do you get to stay over somewhere?
Gordon Byrne was an amazing writer, mostly non-fiction. He did some fiction as well. My editor worked with him. He did an amazing book. I mean, it's hard going about Fred and Rosemary West called Happy Like Murderers. It's an investigation of that whole situation.
Did he do one about George Best and?
He did some football one. He did a famous snooker one called Pocket Money, where he accompanies Steve Davis and all that. It's really brilliant. Accompanies Steve Davis and Higgins, all these people who are tour of Japan stuff. It's a brilliant documentary of the. So he's very interested. He was a guy who wrote about a lot of working class subcultures in a way. So when he died, they formed a prize called the Gordon Byrne Prize, and it's really for sort of innovative fiction and non-fiction that might deal with things that mainstream fiction doesn't. Specifically, maybe a working class background, things like that. So. The first year, This Is Memorial Device was shortlisted for Gordon Byrne Prize and I didn't win it. But the next year, For the Good Times get shortlisted and it did win.
Aye, so we say 2018 when you first published it.
Aye, that's right.
And 2019 you've actually won.
That's right. Then I won it. Aye,
oh, brilliant!
Which was amazing.
City of the Red Lights.
Yep. Yeah.
Explain this to me.
City of the Red Knight. So it's
City of the Red Knight. Sorry,
I just had a revelation about it. I was very, 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 very interested in William Burroughs, the writer. I've always been obsessed by him, particularly this book called Cities of the Red Knight. It's an amazing book. And when I was writing my first book, Memorial Device, I began to feel like I was building up an actual physical body. You know, there's this idea of the golem in mystical Judaism, where you build something out of clay, but then you use letters, language to write on the back of its head, and the language literally brings it alive. And I began to feel this book was coming alive. And then I had a total revelation, because I always thought William Burroughs' books are kind of alive. They're like organisms, like entities almost, rather than books. There's a life to them. And I realised, of course, the Cities of the Red Knight is talking about the internal organs. The heart, the lungs, they're the cities of the red night. Then they're connected by these sort of like these pathways of the veins and stuff like that. And I began to think he's created an entity. This book is alive. And I began to realise that's kind of what I was doing myself. I had a mad feeling when I had this revelation, you know.
So that's what most people have. I'm reading reviews, right? Most people say that about your books. That as if they're alive, they become this. Talking about these characters, especially. Yep. I mean, I remember listening to you. You were in an interview with somebody. I don't know who it was, but you were talking about a character in Airdrie. This one, and guys or people actually were actually coming up to you in Airdrie and going, I know who that is, by the way.
Oh, Big Patty for Memorial Device. This guy said to me, I knew Big Patty, mate, and most of it, most of what he said in the book, you got right, but he didn't live on a flat at the top of South Bridge Street. He was in a wee cottage your side. Seriously, 100%. Wouldn't take no for an answer. Absolutely believes he knows Big Pie.
That must make you feel brilliant.
But it is. See, when something steps off the page and the thing becomes alive and the characters, my whole thing is Memorial Device. Everybody's got their memorial device. Everyone has a story about how music changed their life or when they were growing up and they met these people that introduced them to a whole other world. Everybody's got that.
Yep.
So I began to realise it doesn't even belong to me anymore. There's a whole Memorial Device community now. Memorial Device alternative national treasures, and that's not me and nothing to do with me, but I love letting go of that, and I love it going out there and having its own life and changing people's lives the way the music did for me. It's the whole point in the book in the way, you know.
100%. And I think when I was reading your book, obviously the second book we're talking about, I just wanted to put on Perry Como for some reason. After the first chapter, I was like, I need to play Perry Como.
So Perry Como is very much the guys in the Who are members of the IRA. They really look up to Perry Como, and he provides a sort of dissonant mirror. He's got this very different masculinity than they have. And my dad's hero was Perry Como,
right?
And
my dad always got a Perry Como haircut. He still does to
he actually does the cut.
I love that chat, because that's again that brings me back to looking at my uncles, my aunties, uncles, and that, where they used to do like it was the Taylors doing it at St Enoch's.
Slaters.
Slaters. It was another one. It was quite really well known for their shirts. It was like they would get Billy Eckstine shirts, and stuff like that. So you're writing about Perry Como, and you could tell it was so endeared to the heart that, you know, obviously I could just tell right away the beauty in that. Like,
it's the voice I know more than any other voice. And outside of my family and lovers, Perry Como is the voice I know best and I've lived with the longest. So it has an incredible, it's powerful. People call it easy listening. I think, what's the opposite of easy listening? Because that's what Perry Como is. Elemental listening, because it's so heavy. It's impossible. Aye. Can the ocean keep from rushing to the shore? It's just impossible. All these very heavy concepts, you know.
See, I've got a dark secret, whereas my dad used to love listening to Matt Monro, and that was always, I'd come down the stairs on a Sunday, hungover or whatever, thingman, and he'd always be playing Matt Monro, and would always tell me stories about how Frank Sinatra ruined this guy's career and all that, Matt Monro. And I still to this day I can listen to Matt Monro because just that, that voice.
It's like a time capsule immediately. That's why you have to be careful. You can't just stick Como on, because it's weighty. And then my dad was very much like those characters in the book, in that my dad was rough. He was boast about Como. He'd be like, Como never smoked. He never drank, he never swore, and he was always faithful to his wife. All things that my dad was incapable of doing. You know what I mean? But the whole point, my dad, do you know what I mean? The whole point they were beyond. This was a guy that transcended the normal things that men did. He's like a god almost.
Aye. Everything they're against, but look up so much,
And even just having that name, Como, it sounds like a god.
Aye. It does actually, doesn't it? Como.
Yeah. My dad listened to Como records, he would call it Como therapy.
Oh, aye. But you do a thing, David, which I love. I described For the Good Times. I've got a real interest in, the whole Troubles and whole Irish history and that from my own background. But I described it earlier on as Trainspotting meets the Troubles. But that's a bit of I don't know how you feel about Irvin Welsh, but I love Irvin Welsh. Just the way he sort of writes how he speaks, he puts it down there.
Aye.
And the characters that were created, they used to, are very characters. And also, one of his great characters in all the books was a guy called Just Terry. Never even made it into the Trainspotting film, and why they never. And I've just read Blade Artist, where and reading, when you've got the guys, these IRA guys that are in a comic shop, and how do you develop just getting characters like that? I mean, how do you create
These plots? How do you do the
plots
plots
and characters and people that just come alive? Like,
Do you know, it's impossible. It's actually impossible for me to say. That's why I could never run a creative writing fiction workshop, because it's still magic to me. It's absolute mystery. One of the things I do is, believe it or not, is I never start a book with an idea ever. I try to sit, I listen. When I start to think I'm hearing the character, I almost just start transcribing. And I try to get myself out of the way and no have a thought. Because a lot of times, and for the good things, the characters would do stuff, I'd be like, oh, for fuck's sake, what did you do that for?
Aye.
You're nutcase, what are you thinking? But you'd have to be. I would be like, I'm not a puppet master. I'm letting these characters live and do all this mad stuff that's out of my control.
See, when I was...
Genius.
So one of the questions that I was researching how I would interview an author, right? And one of the questions was plot or character, right? Or what comes first? The character, does the character come first, or do you create a plot first and then the character just builds in? Or do you have characters just in your head and it's just a case of they take over and then the plot becomes...
I start with neither of those. I start deliberately with no ideas. I don't allow ideas. In fact, one of my big things about my books is they're not about any one thing in particular. My books are not there to make a point, and I think that's how they stay alive, the way I was talking about an organism, because you can't solve them. It's not like you get to the end, you're like, all right, I get that was about this and that point was made and that's it. You know what I mean? My whole thing is they're alive and you can start again and get new things from them. There's not one definitive reading of any of my books, and those characters spontaneously manifested themselves as I was writing it. For instance, there's a character in Memorial Device called Mary Hannah. She's a legendary bassist in Mary Hannah. She's one you're talking about Irvin's supporting character. She's like always in the background of the book. She doesn't really come to the foreground, and you only see her through other people's eyes. But I became obsessed by her. I was like, God, Mary Hannah's so cool. I wish I could hang out with her more. I wish that she'd turned up more in the book, but she didn't. So I'm writing another book a few years later, Monument Maker. Big, massive book, like 250,000 words. Took me 10 years. But at one stage, a guy's visiting a sculptor. And I remembered in the back of my mind that Mary Hannah had made some sculptures as well, but I wasn't really hitting consciously. So he goes into this garage in Airdrie and he opens the door to visit this sculpture. And I'm writing this in real time. And honestly, the door opens and I look in and no joke, it's Mary Hannah. Mary Hannah's a sculptor. And I almost cried. I was like, oh my God, it's Mary. I haven't seen her in years. And she was younger than she was in Memorial Device. And I almost wept. I was like, I'm going to get to spend time with a younger Mary. And she was so Mary Hannah, she only stuck around for 5,000 words and then she fucked off again. totally typical Mary behaviour. But just for those 5,000 words, it was pure magic. You've got no control over this.
Mate,
you know?
Man, that's just blows my head. That's
ordinary mortals like myself.
I know. Without knowing, reading one of his books, and I actually kind of thought that he writes books the way Weatherall does mixes. Does remixes. That was my sort of what I thought.
Just magical.
And everybody should be prescribed a part of David Keenan. So you know what I mean? A bit of that just to read.
But my books aspire to the quality of music. Joseph is totally accurate. My books aspire to the quality of music, and I would like you to enjoy my books. Not the way where you analyse a novel when you come out and say it was about this or that, because it's just the way you listen to a piece of music. Yep. You don't listen to a piece of music to get to the end of it to then say what it was about. You get the music is the experience itself. So my novels are more like dancing about music or something like that. You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely. Also, it's another thing that you've promoted or said to people, you should read that. You can read your books backwards.
Yes, definitely, in any order. Also, you can jump in at different chapters. That's what I mean by organisms. There's multiple ways of approaching them, and you can approach them yourself, and you'll get different readings from them. I mean, like my book, Monument Maker, you can read backwards. I didn't even realise what was happening with Monument Maker until I finished it.
Is that your latest one?
No, it's my second, not the latest one, but the one before that.
Ah, right, okay.
Yeah, and I didn't even realise what the whole book was, what was happening with the book until I finished it myself.
So you say you could read the end chapter and go backwards?
Yes,
each chapter.
Read each chapter backwards, and you'll get a whole different reading, and you'll find out different stuff that if you'd known earlier would have changed the book for you. You know what I mean?
I'm going to show my lack of intellect here, but is it Exabeth?
Exabeth. That was the most amazing experience, that book. I have no recollection of writing that book. Not a single memory. No. And this goes back to Weatherall. This all ties up really nicely. So what happened is the last time we were at that conference we were talking about, this is where Exabeth comes from. Andrew says Andrew's a lover of literature as much as he loves music. You know, this is why we began doing literary events with Andrew. Me and him did a lot together. And So we're sitting at Carcassonne and he's like, I'd like to do my own publishing company. We'll call it Convenanza. And once a year we'll publish a deluxe hardback, limited edition. You can get it at the festival. He said, the first one I'd like is for you to do it.
Right.
And he's like, do you have any books maybe lying about in a hard drive? I'd written a lot of novels that I hadn't published. So I was like, I've got a lot of stuff. I'll look in my hard drive. So I found this thing called Extabeth. And as I was reading that, I was like, no way, when did I really write this? And obviously I knew I must have, but I had no recollection of the entire thing. Wow. It must have been like 5 months out of my life that completely are like a void. So I sent it to Lee and Andrew and I was like, would this be good for Convenanza? And Lee was like, mate, this is your next novel, never mind the one for Convenanza.
Man.
And he was like, this is pure magic. So we put it out, and to this day, I have no memory writing that. I think that book is pure magic.
Well, I need to ask then, because so one of the questions would be, what got you into writing, right? But another question would be, when did you realise that I'm an author? This is author material, as in I'm now an author, because I know that you wrote a book and then you destroyed it, your first book.
I did, yes.
Explain that.
That was a ritual I took. Well, how do you become a writer when you don't know any other writers and you've never met a writer? You've never been at a workshop. You've never met him who's been published. You don't know how to get an agent. I had no idea, but I was a fan. I've been reading books my entire life. Obsessive book reader and book collector, always had been. So my dream was always to be an author. I was a music writer, but I didn't know how to be an author. So I was getting into my 30s and I was like, all right, you know what? I'm getting older. If I don't, I need to get serious. If I'm going to write novels, I need to start writing now because time's getting short. So I started writing a novel. And I quickly realised it was the worst novel of all time. And I was like, I was despairing. I was like, I will never, ever be an author because this is garbage. Every cliche in the book, but then I caught myself, I was like, wait a minute, this is what everybody gives up.
Aye.
The point is to get beyond this stage. So I took a vow right there. I said to myself, do you know what? I'm not going to give up. I'm going to complete the worst novel of all time. But I'm making a vow that when I complete it, I'm going to destroy it. So I'm going to teach myself to write hopelessly because I think that's the only way you could ever become a writer. You know. So when I finished after a year, wrote the worst novel of all time. I not only deleted it from my laptop, I took a fucking hammer to my laptop and I smashed my laptop into smithereens, threw it away, started again, and the next book I wrote was this memorial device.
Apparently the guy who wrote the Old Testament.
Love to hear that book.
The guy who wrote the Old Testament thought that he didn't destroy it, he just come up with a New Testament.
I should have smashed up that first one, started again.
Oh, that's absolutely brilliant. So when I was reading it, I was like, no, you're not going to destroy it. You shouldn't. Why would you do that? And then I realised it's because it's a process.
Yeah, and you're asking like what? So I obviously when I published my first book, my novel, I felt like, oh my God, I'm a new writer, blah blah blah. But one of the motivation for me writing goes right back to being a kid, and I knew that I talked about my father and that, and I knew I would I knew that I had some kind of duty and some kind of talent to memorialise these type of men in that type of situation that they couldn't do. And they would be forgotten without it all. And I wanted to write a micro history, what it was like to be actual men living through history. Not the big historical narratives, the small people living through it. Yeah. And I wanted to memorialise my dad and his brothers. So even as a kid, when I was sitting in that room with them, I'd be like, one day I will make these men literally immortal.
So that you know, that leads me to a question then. So your characters that you have, right? How close are they to the people that you actually know? Are they based on the people that you know? Not
really. I mean, there's no single character that you could point to a single person. No. Everything's composite. And also, I always say, I don't think these characters up. So I believe they have a kind of an independent existence in a way. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's just, it's me to like let them be kind of thing, you know? Yeah. But the biggest motivating thing ultimately for me, and this is in my life, is gratitude.
Yeah.
Gratitude is the biggest thing. It is the greatest practice in your life because every moment, when we're sitting here right now, we have so much to be grateful for. Just the fact we're able to sit and do this. We have our comparative health. There's no immediate crisis outside the window. Absolute gratitude. And see, when I was growing up in Airdrie, I felt so good. I mean, people would say, you grew up in a fucking shithole, you know, and I had a father who worked in a shoe shop. I mean, it was the most romantic time ever. I had the best childhood. I had a loving father and a loving mother. Never felt poor once. Loved Airdrie. I saw everything that you could see that was so exciting. And again, I said to myself, one day I'm going to write, because a lot of Scottish novels and a lot of Scottish literature, you brought up Irving, is often associated with addiction, poverty, violence, alcoholism. And I wanted to say, no, Scottish towns can be places of total romance. They can be places of infinite possibility. And that's where my gratitude came. I will write books to say thank you for the beautiful gifts I was given by growing up in these places.
Well, the
Nice
first guy that was on was Bob. If you've watched the first YouTube Green Sunrise, and it was Bob, and he's an Airdrie guy, and he's the same age as you. He'll be just turning 51.
Wow.
So I was like, Bob, do you know him? Do you know? But Bob's obviously dealing with some stuff at the moment. When obviously we're talking about EUPD, that was the first episode, and Bob's dealing with a lot of stuff at the moment. So, but I was talking to him, and I still talk to him every kind of week and every couple of days. And I was telling him, I'm interviewing David Keenan. Do you know him? He's from Airdrie kind of thing. He's like, have you got a sister?
I do, yes.
Right, because I think
teacher.
what was her name? Sorry,
Helen.
I'm sure that's what he says. I might know the sister. So that was the conversation. That's how it ended. I just wondered if you knew Bob Condy.
I like that gratitude thing. We were
But the gratitude is amazing.
We were talking about a famous comedian. I don't want to mention his name because I really like him, but I'm about to slag him here. But he was doing that thing. I was saying I was listening to a podcast. Funnily enough, he was on a podcast, and he was doing that thing about, he grew up in Glasgow, right? She can take your guess. Irish parents, but he was making Glasgow out, and I don't really mind that and everything else, because where I grew up, growing up in City Hall, there was issues with poverty, drugs, you name it, but like you've just said, never felt poor, loving family.
Same as well.
City Hall was a fantastic community. I still get emotional when I pass by in the bus, even though it's totally different.
Yeah.
And but he was doing that sort of thing as if, it was like Glasgow was like Beirut, it was like, I went to school with guys that, their dads chopped their head off and all that, And when I was listening, I thought, it's going to a big audience, and come on, I live in that city. All cities are basically the same. And I like that attitude about,
It's trying to fly in the face of that a little bit. I mean, it's just not the full story. It's not the full story. So I wanted to give the other side of that story a little bit, It's all about saying yes. That's a big thing for me. How can you say yes even in difficult circumstances? It's dead easy to say no and complain and protest. But how can you affirm? So a big thing for the good times is these are kids growing up in a war zone, but yet they're resilient. They learn how to say yes even in the face of all that. I think that's the big thing, because that's what life asks us. Can you say yes to all this, including suffering, including the fact that life feeds on life? You need it takes an awful big affirmation to say yes to life, but that's what art helps us do. You know what I mean?
When I met Joe for the first time, and I'll be honest, I know you well know, everybody seemed to know Joe. I went home and said, met Joe Curry, and my wife's like, Joe. And I'm like, but the introduction was Joe the plumber. Now, Joe the plumber was the bullshitter that challenged Barack Obama in 2000.
I got a few references to that at that time.
So right away I'm thinking, Joe the plumber, didn't want to say it. And then you were talking about all these people that you knew David Keenan, you knew Andy Bell, and then you're like, you knew Andrew Weatherall, and I'm like,
it's only just being immersed in that.
Who is this guy?
It goes all the way back to like upbringing, didn't it? Again,
But
music about the house,
but
and stuff.
You were just such a down to earth guy, and you're living this fantastic life, and but you are to ordinary Joes. Can I use that pun in that cliche? But myself, myself and yourself, David. I mean, we're on a podcast here about mental health, and if anybody, they might not be watching it because they know I'm on, but they, if they're watching it, I can avow there's two characters here that are just remarkable in what they do, and that's my gratitude to both of you and to Andrew Weatherall, who, I mean, you must have seen my face, my jaw drop when you just casually mentioned him. I'm like, right away, Screamadelica, I mean, he's a hero,
Yeah, and what Andrew did, and I think he's been a role model definitely for us as well, as Andrew was all about community. I mean, Andrew never played Glastonbury. Always refused to play Glastonbury. And he always said, if you're not out in the margins, you're taking up too much room, was his thing. And his whole thing was, rather than tap into already formed commercial sort of communities, create your own. According to your own values. And this has been very much, that's what Joseph's like that as well. And that's, for me, my books, the fact that I do the DJing and I do a lot of events, I go out there and I do talks, and they're more like gigs. They're not like going to a book festival. They're more exciting than that. And I feel like we've created a community around us that has a real sense of like taking part. Like everybody's involved, you know what I mean?
Aye.
And it's the model, my publisher always says this thing, that it's the acid house model. Everyone's on the dance floor together. And I love that idea, you know?
Aye.
That's brilliant.
But it's all about community. Community's a big thing for me. How do you generate a community round the values that we share, round the art and literature and music that we share, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's when I thought we were doing like Sonic Treasure show, like doing that, you know. I mean, I'm a plumber, you know what I mean? That's my graft, that pays the bills, that's what I do, you know what I mean? Music is again something that we've been immersed in, like through family and brought up with, you know, we've all been there with that. But the show, the Sonic Treasure show again, is all about the community, it's all about like, the idea came sadly out of Andrew's passing, where I was asked to do a tribute show on Radio Magnetic I used to work with, and I'd done it, and then I was like, I had 2 CDJs, and I was like, fuck, how you know, I was always vinyl, you know, and I'm going, I need to get to know how to work these things, and I had a wee sampler, or the wee space echo, and I was like, right, sat one night, got ideas, put it all together, and I put this wee tribute show together, and then I was like, I've got an idea here, you know, like, why don't I kind of try and like approach some like guests and stuff, and we hit COVID, so probably with COVID it did take off, and it gave me time to sit in my arse and actually go, right, instead of like having to jump out to jobs and stuff like that, right, there was nothing happening. So it gave me, I had all this music and books and stuff that I've no time to actually immerse myself in, so we know where else to go. I was great. Other people were building man huts and man caves and climbing the wall to get out to fucking the pub, you know what I mean? I was glad to be, I'm in the house, I'm surrounding myself with what I've collected over all these years, you know? So out of that then came the show, was just a case of contacting people. With the advent of social media has been a lot easier, and just like saying, look, do you want to come on to a show? It's carte blanche, you've got, do what you want to do, like make a mixtape, like make like a C90 tape you used to do, just your own favourites. To be honest, again, that community feel about the show that gives it is it could be Andy Bell, it could be Sean Johnson, it could be, you know, MD, but it can also be somebody who I dig personally, or somebody locally I know that goes out and puts as much money into the industry, like buying, you know, digitally or vinyl, you know, as well. They deserve a chance. They've got a voice that needs to be spoken. I always believe that there's a great album, there's a great book in every person that walks, you know.
Yep.
It's just getting it out there, you know. And my give back is actually doing like that show, was doing it, you know. I was harping on to him for ages, you know, right, we need to get up, we need to do this, we need to do that, and now we're actually just involved doing it anyway. So, but that community aspect, you know.
Massive.
If I can just get my plug in while he's saying community.
Yes.
You're talking about your passion. I mean, my passion, like probably the vast majority of this city, is football. And never really done nothing. But one day I was looking at, I think it was a football magazine, and it advertising, I don't know if you have heard, but again, tying into mental health, because it does fantastic for that, was something called Man v Fat. And this is really a Weight Watchers with a ball, right? At the time, I didn't really need it. Right, that's right. Right. So, so the idea is you go, you play 30 minutes each Sunday, but before you go, you put yourself on a scale. If you've lost weight, you'll get a goal. If you do it 3 weeks in a row, you'll get yourself a hat trick towards your team. You go and play for 30 minutes, and so say it's a 5 each draw. It then goes on the scale, but you need to track your weight. You've
so
got
you can get additional
right?
points,
Right.
That's
So again, I get 2 halves. So, you know, I said to Paul, if I go on this, I really want to plug this. Anybody just go on Google, because the community aspect is, since then, the amount of people that I've met and are extremely friendly with, and now, it's a Sunday, there's groups set up. You just mentioned, so we've all got our wee WhatsApp groups. There's games our games on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. It's just because, you know, that organic, everybody's going to meet each other.
Yeah.
Paul's friend started, and he will be a testament to that. As soon as somebody joined, I couldn't believe it. People were just so encouraging. It was more about the staying healthy, you know, the mental health, and the you know, the camaraderie, more that feeling as if we're on it together. And it's just, it's just went wild. And I know I've got my phone off, but I know that when I put it back on, I'll have like 40 of these guys dropping daft messages about what's happening, in the world, or how the podcast,
daft messages.
because we've created that friendship that just through that community has grown. Just
Aye,
through
aye,
everyone
it's
getting
Beautiful.
involved.
You mentioned banter. People can be really sort of snotty about banter and think banter's so important.
Oh,
it's one of the great joys. I think as men, it's very good to be around other men that are good at banter.
Yeah.
It's such a brilliant relief to me. Sometimes I'll go back to my wife when we've been hanging out. And I was like, me and Joseph and a couple of the guys on the pub. I was like, I feel so good after just a night of just mindless banter. It's beautiful.
Some of
We
the
need it.
patter and banter that you would get in good company is even better than going to pay money to see whatever comedian.
Aye.
It's medicine. It really is medicine for me.
Since I was telling a man fat story there, I got injured at one point and I was out for like 6 weeks, and they just changed the teams every now and again. They'll do that. They'll change the sort of squads, right? Just try and freshen it up. There's people joining all the time. So I text my mates, I'm coming back on Sunday. I think, mate, I'm in such and such. Now they find out by what colour you're in. Unfortunately, I'm in the blues, which indicates the team that I like. But anyway, and I get told you're in the pink team, and I'm like, what? There's a pink team? Aye. I went, that's not a problem. I'll go and buy Celtic had that pink strip out of the time. So I went and bought that. It turns up I wasn't. I was in like the black team or something. And I still to this day get called dark fruits after that drink. But brilliant, just brilliant.
What happens if you lose? You do that great, you lose that much weight, you get transferred.
It's in your BMI, it goes in the BMI, okay? So the body mass index,
right?
Which is a lot of nonsense, because I remember I go on the rugby thing, I like my rugby as well, and it was showing Johnny Wilkinson, he was 15 stone 10, and 5'10", and the guy's whole body was just muscle, and it was saying with his body mass index he would be like morbidly obese going on this rate. And, the guy was a specimen. He was like the best player in the world rugby at
what was his fit when he was he 15 stone when he was
15
at his peak?
At his peak, 15 stone. It was all muscle, it was just all. So there's people there, sometimes unfortunately, but I like a tackle, and sometimes I'm a wee bit late with a kick, because there's a lot of big, tall, young, skinny young boys there, and then you're like, why are you?
Remember, they've got their work the next day.
Why are you here?
Carry on.
Why are you here? Why are you here? But but we get two good signings at the weekend there. So a shout out to Akram. Who is just an outstanding football player. He just signed there, but that boy does not need us anyway, and plus he's a really good looking boy. He's a monkey, baldy fat guy like me, but I he's kicking for him and he scores the goals. And Naeem Nine's another signing we go, he's a business as well.
So is this giving these boys that like a rejuvenation, to get out there and kick a ball when they might not have actually had the opportunity to even be in
there's a lot of guys, it's open to all shapes and sizes, and that's true, I mean, there's lots of guys when they turn up, you can see them turning up, and I don't know if I was the same myself. I've never sort of been the shy type, but maybe I am. But they go and they think, like the Weight Watchers, you can see them being really nervous. There's a lot of people that are really overweight. I've seen some amazing transformations. I've seen guys lose 12 stone, all right, a right good length of period, and they've obviously done their other thing outside.
It's the confidence as well. But, it's that confidence aspect that you need. It gets built in within that. See, you saying it, my boy. Sorry to take us off this, Brian. My boy Gabriel, who Yannick and Joseph, right? So Gabriel's the middle. Joseph's 22. Gabriel's 20, right? Yannick's 16, right? So Gabriel's 20, and when he speak, wouldn't he say a thing? Wouldn't he, he'd always just be like, I dead shy and everything.
Aye.
And during lockdown, him and his mates decided to just start doing weights in the driveway in the back, right? And he knew he's like, I don't want to say he's because my boy, but he's like an Adonis. right? He's
solid.
like shaped like that, solid. What
Wow.
physique he's got on him, and he's the most cockiest wee cunt you'll get.
You know, mad.
He's full of confidence now. He's wanting to pick me up and go. He's not, but it's brought him right out. And I'm wondering if, like, but that's a great aspect of like doing something like that as well. You know, if you can just give somebody a wee shoe up, you know what I mean, just a wee punt up into it, you know, to bring up that confidence. You know,
100%.
it's in there. You
A
know,
lot of people, Paul, just go for that, the mental health. I mean, even if, you know, I mean, I've lost a couple of stone, but even if I didn't lose any more, I would never give it up, because just that, you got to play football with your pals. And, you know, when you're getting to my age, you don't need to be, although even sometimes I think I'm Lionel Messi, Diego Maradona in my head, you know what I mean? Hardly moving, but, you know, I'm kicking a ball, and that's great for it, you know, in itself. And that's just, but I get that joy, and I especially get that joy reading your books, David, I have to say, and I get that joy listening to your music and be in Paul's company, and that's
What's the radio station that you're at the now?
there's a Radio Magnetic.
Radio Magnetic.
You'll find me and David on Sunday on there. Just
Right.
get a wee plug.
Aye, definitely.
It's, I don't know when this goes out, but it's Radio Magnetic's the sort of flagship station that I'll do. But also there's a Radio Buena Vida, which is over on the south side. They've got a beautiful wee cafe, coffee shop, you know. You can get a wee bite to eat, bring your own bottle. But they've got the decks just like sitting in the window, so you're playing in the window. It's a beautiful setup. They used to be over like a wee record shop, some great reward, and then they got their own premises. So that's a great community hub as well.
It looked good, actually. I remember you sharing it. I think you shared it on Instagram.
I love getting up the road, getting my stuff ready and just going, right, get out. You know, usually I'm always running about, but it's like, get over, and then the minute you're there, it's like, right, and relax, you know what I mean? And, okay, it's great. It's just great to always try to do with the show is a bit like yourself. It's not about me. It's about it's about the music that's played. It's about the artists. You know what I mean? That's the thing. It's about, you know, it's about getting their music out. It's getting harder and harder for them as well to make a few bob with, like, so it's gone are the days I can down to Woolies or gone here there buying a 7-inch single. I don't know if you made more money then or whatever, but I think it's split up so much now, isn't it, with like Spotify's and iTunes and Apple and all this, you know what I mean? So
you still have your record company, David?
No, I used to have a record company. I used to run a record shop as well called Volcanic Tongue. It was in Finiston. We did that for about 10 years. And when I ran a couple of labels at that time as well. But no, it's not something I've done anymore. I've got back to being a fan, you know. It's a wee bit, when you're working in retail, I mean, you know, it's tough. And I think a few years after I closed the record shop down, I sort of took myself away from music a little bit. Right. But I've totally got back to being a total fan again and just listening to it because I absolutely love it.
So who are you listening to?
Well, my favourite, I mean, I listen pretty widely to a lot of different stuff. I'm into a lot of like 1960s stuff. I like a lot of like, I'm a total Dylan head and stuff like that. I like a lot of dance music, a lot of dub. I'm into post-punk. I like a lot of industrial and experimental music. And I also like some mainstream stuff. Lana Del Rey is probably my favourite contemporary pop star. Right. Totally obsessed by her. I think she's amazing. I think she's just like the greatest songwriter of our generation.
I worked for Bell and Baden, was my last kind of job before for what I'm doing now. If I'm working for Enable Scotland now, so I work for a charity now. But I worked for Enable Bell and Bain as book publishers, and one of her last books was done through them. They produced it, or they were obviously making it for her. And I thought, where's Lana Del Rey's book? It was just a book. It was an orange on this book. That was the cover. It was this. I'm sure it was an orange, and it was just. And I don't know what it was called. To be honest, I should have known that. But Lana Del Rey, I was like, gonna give us a copy of that. Didn't get one, to be fair. But Lana Del Rey's music, it's just amazing. Just amazing, totally beautiful, just beautiful.
Yeah.
You also, right? You don't have a TV. Is this still the case?
Yeah, I haven't owned a TV probably for 20 years now. Well, I don't buy into any sort of industrial culture stuff. I don't have a car. Yeah, I don't have a TV. I don't read the news. I mean, I'm completely cut off from the modern world in so many ways, and I absolutely love it. I feel as if when I go back to my house, I'm kind of stepping out of time a wee bit, you know. And also, I mean, then you've got to kind of occupy yourself. I think that's why I do so much writing. That's why I ended up play so much music, you know.
So you can completely just turn off and then just go to that place where you need to go.
Yeah, 100%. I love that. Yeah,
throwing the telly tonight.
Do you know what?
Taylor's getting kicked out the window.
I mean, I've never seen any, like, I've never even seen any, like, game. I know Game of Thrones
Game of
exists,
Thrones,
for
know
instance,
that, aye.
but I've not, I know it's probably a wee bit like Lord of the Rings, but I've never seen anything like that. I quite like that. I quite like just, I've got my own cultural agenda. I don't tend to move to anyone else's, you know?
That's
and I want to
brilliant.
decide what my days are going to be about, or what I want to think about, or what I want to interact with that day, you know?
One of my guys, Ian, that works, we talk a lot about turning off to turn on, right?
Yep.
So we turn off everything, turn off your TV and don't listen to the news. And it's so true. If you can actually do that, people in Wayne's our children are being abused. Do you know what I mean? They are being abused. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Through this, watching this.
I agree.
The thing on the wall.
The thing in the wall, it's like sometimes I do it myself. I'm watching that much crap. Sometimes you get it, and it makes you depressed.
I'm actually beginning to know as I'm getting older to actually think I'm wasting. That's a bit of time wasted.
Yep,
I do.
Sitting watching that crap.
Through
you know
this
what I mean?
conversation,
You know?
and through when I was doing the research for this, right? And I'm like that, and I don't do research, but I'll try and write down stuff, and I'll just look into it as much as I can. And I'm like, I was getting excited about this because. But first of all, getting Brian on as well and brother Joseph, but just this, I knew the stuff about you. I knew the fact that TV is no longer no thing in your house. Yep. How does this work? How does that work? And that to me, I was like, right, this is all part of mental health. This is all part of 100%. People who are tuned in. It's this wall, this box in the wall, and it's destroying their life.
Yeah, absolutely.
I have to be a bit, challenge this a bit. I could not live without my regular doses of Only Fools and Horses. That's all I watch. UK Gold. Other than that, right?
Well, that's the only TV. That's the last time I probably watched TV. All the stuff that's in UK Gold. I know all that stuff.
Other than that, you've got all that, the stuff that's so on the telly now. All the the ones that create all the. You know what I'm talking about. See all these.
But I mean, it's time to do other things.
And all these sort of shows.
Well, when we're talking about mental health, another big mental health thing for me is gardening. Gardening has become absolutely massive for me. I've got an allotment, me and my wife, and we do grow a lot of our own vegetables, and we do pretty well. And I've built a hut up there, and I've got a wood burning stove in there. There's a wee deck there and everything. And so, for instance, during lockdown, that kept us sane. We were going up gardening every day, and it was absolutely amazing. And again, with phones off, you're up there an entire day. I mean, it's like meditation.
Yeah.
I can be weeding a bed for like an hour and a half, and not a single thought goes through my head, except a vaguely satisfied feeling to be doing what I'm actually doing.
See, the first house I got, I thought, I'm going to get into this garden. My mum quite liked the garden. She'd come up and do it. But very gradually I decided, I quite like slabbing. Get that garden dug out.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, boom. That's it.
Hold on, he was talking about Fred West here a minute. What's going on?
Oh,
I stayed in the High Flats, the Carn scheme in Springburn.
Aye.
That was a great community as well. One road in, one way out. And I think everybody round about surrounding the areas thought it was a snob scheme. For some reason, it's just a crack me scheme.
Aye.
You never really done anything bad because, everybody got up to whatever, You never done anything majorly bad because your mas and that would go up to the co-op. Remember you don't see them nowadays, the old shopping trolleys.
No.
You see the wee one with the shopping trolley, the hairnet on it as well. And you know that if you were out of order, you'd get one. You'd get one across the back of the head if it was like, your Joseph was up there, we'd be throwing snowballs at people's windows and everything, all that was a good jumping hedges and everything. It was great,
but that was a wee soft as shite scheme. My mum.
Oh, there you go.
Snobby. What's the snobby scheme?
My mum was a medical receptionist.
If it wasn't for Venetian blinds, it'd be curtains for everybody.
The Fairbank Medical Centre. I know the
Fairbank. I was in Fairbank Street.
Aye, so that's how I know.
We were classed as rich because my dad didn't drink, and he would be out working and building stuff and that, right? And he didn't drink but he'd a Betamax video, and it was like, they've got a video, a Sony C7. You could have you see the weight of this thing.
And also those video cassettes cost a fortune back then as well, didn't they?
First videos that were bought was Blue Hawaii and GI Blues. That was it.
That was a Friday night when I was a kid. You're talking about Chevons. It'd be like, right, going up to Asda and get your, you'd hire the video out. You got to hire it out your Betamax. So you'd hire it and then you'd have to take it back the next day.
Yeah, as had videos.
Hire videos. I know. I can't remember what goes on to that there, but we'll talk about that.
I think just turning off of TVs and try to turn off of that world. And
social media is
we worked recently there with the Plymouth Brethren. A lot of jobs we were doing was with the Plymouth Brethren.
Really?
That's how they live. They live like no TV, no.
Did they have an actual community in Glasgow, or is this just an individual family you're working with?
They probably do have. They've got their own schooling and stuff. I don't want to go too much if bad mouth and I'm no bad mouth at all. It's all going like, they've got this and they've got that. But as in that, they live in that sect of like, no TV, sort of. Obviously, things have got to change nowadays with the social media and stuff like that. Kids are growing up as well, but it's their work is their church, you know what I mean, basically, and they're very kind of really, on with what they do, very successful in what they do. They put everything into that.
Where do you stand, David, on audio books, Audible? See, I for a while I listened and I thought, no, it didn't feel natural to me. I needed the book, I needed to turn a page. That's a
good question.
See remember the Kindle?
Audiobooks, by the way.
Remember the Kindle?
Yeah. And I don't like the Kindle because I like to see the physical heft of the book. I like to be able to see how far I've read, how far I've got to go. I just like the physical object, but I'm a big fan of Audible and audio books. In fact, I've started recording my own. I did This Is Memorial Device as an audio book, and I did my new one, Industry of Magic and Light, as an audio book. They're both available, and I have to say, I absolutely loved it.
Did they give you anything different, but from the actual? I mean, I love having the wee bookcase. I love having, because I used to always laugh, during lockdown, and you get people on the television, on the news, they made sure the good books behind them, you know what I mean? Everybody was reading Nietzsche and all that.
Flowers every day.
But, so what do you think? I just love having a book.
Yeah, I do, but I think one of the things that I began to realise it was cool about an audiobook is that a big thing for me in writing, and even in terms of bringing the characters alive, is getting the rhythm right. When I said I aspire to sort of musicality, for me it's all about the rhythm and the sentence. So when I'm writing my books, when I've written down sort of my editorial process is more like I then read it back out loud. And I make sure I never stumble. I make sure the rhythm keeps going. If I stumble, I'll change the sentence to fit a rhythm better. And sometimes the rhythm might be an odd rhythm, but it needs to be in that rhythm. And so one of the good things I found when I was doing audiobooks is you transmit the rhythm of the book really efficiently, and people can get into the rhythm even easier than writing sometimes, And I think also it's good when it's the author himself doing it, because you develop a relationship to the voice.
That's what I was going to say. I read, I've only ever done one audiobook, believe it or not.
Wow.
And it was... I'm not a big reader, to be fair, I'm going to be honest as well, but the audiobook that was The Miracle Mornings by Tim Elrod or something like that, or something Elrod, and I loved it because you could get about your house, doing what you need to do, listen to it, or you could have it on your ears and just listen to it whilst you're walking and stuff like that. So I love the audiobook stuff as well.
David Holmes is a big fan of it. I think he just learned to drive. If I read somewhere, maybe I'm mistaken, right, but he said that and what got him more into driving was audiobooks.
Brilliant.
And then he was actually finding an excuse to jump out at night. I'm going to the shops, jump out so he could catch up with his audiobook. But
you'll laugh, I like listening to a podcast. I'm not just saying on a bit books. I just need the.
I'm not a massive I'm a great reader. I'll get so far and then I'll put it down and I'll go back to it, right? But
that's what I do.
The Industry of Music and Light, I read got halfway. And then it was through Amazon Prime or something like that, right, whatever, and I went, I'll go on that, I'll try it, the audiobook. So it was, I got yours right away, and see, there's certain bits to the book, like, I was like, kind of...
It's me,
So it's like him, imagine, as you say, I'm actually trying to think when if he stopped to get a cup of tea, or to have his lunch when he was doing it, you know what I mean? Because it's just total,
it's just total,
right? And it's him, and it's like, even there was a couple of wee things in the book. See the bagpipe bit? Right.
I make the sound. So I start doing the bagpipe sounds with my voice and stuff like that.
Right. I couldn't get that in the book. But see, whenever you done that in the book, the audio, it was fucking amazing.
And then what's interesting is you go back to the text.
And then he was getting into the distance where...
But you shattered one illusion but earlier on, and this is why I like a book. I'm terrible for... thinking what does what does the author mean by that? What is he trying to? And I love the line, and I use that when Samuel was talking about, his dad and feeding the hamsters to the snake, and basically saying, "No, that's life." And if snakes could shrug.
But it blew him in his shoulders.
Exactly right. They'd be shrugging all the time. They'd be shrugging all the time. And I thought, that's magic. That's just wonderful. And that tells. But I was just, I must have sat on that line for ages, thinking of all the different examples and where I would be, and what does that mean? And because it does. I mean, I use that for my kids. 2018 or that.
See, I forget that. I hadn't remembered that sentence until you told me that. And when you tell me, it has this sort of, it feels like something that nothing to do with me.
Aye.
That's something that happened. You remind me of that. I'm like, wow. And I'm just remembering it one, because these characters are alive. I remember another one, I think it's maybe Barney at the time, and they're trying to have a meeting, and there's somebody's eating a salad, and Barney, and he's like, see that radish? See that radish?
That's
here?
right,
See if
aye,
I was a
aye.
radish, I'd be that exact
That's
radish
right,
there. And
aye.
I'm like, we're trying to have a conversation, but I'm setting a bomb into Europa here, and
Exactly.
you're identifying with a
Aye.
radish,
And that's, but so I'll say that all the time now. People say, you're just trying to say, and instead of saying to people, no, that's life. What my wife's great one is, it is what it is. I'll say, but I'll now say, but that's what happens. If snakes could shrug, they'd be shrugging all the time, even doing it.
That is class.
Well,
That is so good.
But I love that, I mean, honestly, I'm not
That's back to banter and patter, isn't it?
I'm not-
It's joy of language, and that's the thing. I grew up with my dad. I like to get joy of language, and the Irish very much have that as well. One of the things I wanted to do in the book is there's a lot of Irish jokes in the book.
I was going to ask you just that. That was when he was saying it, I was thinking about you like a good joke in the book.
But that's
innit?
part of that's part of joy in language. The joy of a joke.
Cute angina.
Aye.
Cute angina. That's an absolute classic.
Brilliant.
But if you read the way I do it in the book, I arrange the jokes as if they're like poetry, as if they're experimental poetry. Because I would say the same urge that animates like James Joyce, Ulysses, and all the experimental Irish literature. The flip side of that is the Irish joke. That's a working class version of that kind of modernism, the joy in language.
Yep.
If you just play with language, you'll get a sort of revelation. And I saw the Irish joke is exactly that same thing. Faith and joy in words, And that's part, ultimately, that's part.
Aye.
But I love stuff like that. But for me, somebody that could never be an author, but would have, would love to be, that curse of, when I was at school, I was rubbish at everything else other than English and modern studies, right? Proud to say I got my English higher. But that Shakespeare, nobody was interested in Shakespeare. I went out and bought the whole lot. Couldn't understand it, but I used to love, and every single line. And then a teacher saying to me, trying to educate me of what that line actually meant. So it wasn't just the words that were there on the paper. There was more behind that, and still every book I read, I will read that. So I made a joke about the New Testament. I'm not even the most religious person, but I can read the Bible as as just
As an atheist.
Another, I wouldn't say I'm an atheist. I would say there's a spirituality about me.
I totally agree. I mean, I grew up, but when I went to Sunday, my mum sent me to Sunday school every year of my life when I was a kid. So I really know the Bible, and I'm glad I do. And I actually think it's an influence on I think that there's a sort of a biblical cadence. What the language is. I think my books have as well, and they owe a lot to their biblical rhythms, and and also I like to tell ordinary stories, but in the terms of as if they were as if they're biblical. As if this is biblical. You know what I mean?
I mean, we were talking about funerals earlier on, and now everybody's a great time. I mean, in the New Testament, I can't even tell you who the gospel author was, but it says Jesus says, "Let the dead bury their own dead." And I've always taken for that line as it's always stuck my mind as if, people have passed, but, life is about living, let the dead bury their own dead.
Yeah, exactly.
They've now gone,
And they're one of the dead. When the dead die, the dead are their people now.
Yeah.
For a while, when my dad, When my dad died in 2013, I was tormented by a series of really nightmarish visitations because I was so upset with him dying that he would return in my dreams. But he's a sharp dresser, he wore beautiful suits and that. Yeah. But his suits would be all rotten, and he'd be holding in his internal organs, and his face would be half rotted away, and he would keep coming back. And I realised what was happening, and I wonder if this is where zombies come from culturally. I realised it was the power of love that was drawing him back. Because I wanted him to come back, he had to answer it. But he was saying to me, look at the state of me. Right. I'm one of the dead now. You need to let me go. And when I finally did a ritual that allowed me to leave my father to go, and he never returned as a zombie again. Because that's exactly what we're talking about in the Bible. Let the dead bury the dead. My dad was one of the dead now.
Yeah,
I had to realise that.
The river. Yeah.
This was the river. Yeah. So I'll tell you this is my mad thing that happened to me with my dad, and this is what ended these dreams as well. And it ties in again with Gordon Byrne and the prize and everyone we've been talking about.
Right.
So the first year I went to the Gordon Byrne prize, this is Memorial Days, was shortlisted. I didn't win, but I partied pretty damn hard afterwards in the hotel. You know, it was the first time I'd ever been in an award ceremony. I couldn't believe it. It was just it was amazing. We partied all night in my hotel room. And my dad, when he died, my dad was born with a caul, a lucky cap, and it grows out of the top of the baby's head and it seals them in a sort of little bubble. And when they're born, you need to break it, otherwise they would suffocate. But there became this folk idea that if you're born with a caul, you can never drown because you've been survived the waters of life. And so sailors would put advertisements in newspapers saying looking for a caul if they were going out to sea. Right. So when my dad always carried his caul around with him everywhere, his lucky cap he called it. So when he died, I inherited his lucky cap, and he put it in a wee sort of like cloth pouch with the initial D on it, and gave it to me when I died. So when he died, so I'd always carry it in my wallet wherever I went, you know, bring the lucky cap. So the night after, we're partying really hard at the Gordon Byrne prize for This Is Memorial device. Next day I get up, look in my wallet, Dad's lucky cap's gone. I was totally distraught. And I mean, for a second, I know it sounds mad, but for a second I did think, did we do a Keith Richards and sniff my dad's lucky cap last night? I thought maybe we'd snorted it, we'd partied that hard. So I'm feeling pretty bad about that, you know what I mean? So I'm staggering at the hotel in the morning, I'm going to meet my editor in a pub, and I look down and it's lying there. It must have fell out of my pocket when I took my key out the night before. It survived the whole night, the wee D pouch. But something was wrong. And I said, this thing wants to leave me. This thing wants to leave me. It doesn't want to come back. It's time for me to let this go. And so I was staggering through Durham. I crossed over a wee bridge just next to Durham Cathedral on my way to meet my editor at the pub for some lunch. And a voice out of the air said to me, throw your dad in the river. And without even allowing myself to have a second thought or a doubt about it, I took the thing and I threw it in the river. Yeah. And then I collapsed crying, thinking, what have I done? It's 1 in 8,000 people born with a lucky cap. It's a complete miraculous thing that I'd inherited from my dad. And then I had the moment of complete and utter revelation. He can never drown. I just threw him into a river and he can never drown. And that's when I realised my dad is alive in every waterway of the world now. And I realised I traded a dead relic to find my dad out in the world. And that's when he never came back as a zombie. It was a moment of complete epiphany for me. Mind-blowing. Brilliant. Mind-blowing shit.
And that's why you're an author, David.
That's it, aye.
There you go.
That's it.
So rituals?
Rituals. That was a ritual that allowed me to let go of my father and find him out in the world rather than through a dead relic. You know?
Yeah. I mean,
and I had to listen. It was mad, but I didn't doubt. I didn't allow myself to. I didn't allow the doubting mind to get in. I was like, this has to be done.
It was done.
I don't even know why. I'm not going to question it. I did it. And then when I did it, I realised I could never drown. I never thought it out. But what a gift.
You didn't think, I'm going to throw it in because
it never occurred to me. I thought, I've disposed of my dad's remains. What an absolute fucking idiot. What am I thinking? And then it came to me in a flash. Amazing. Total gift.
Wow.
You know?
An absolute gift.
I remember I was really close to my granny Mullen when I was wee. When she died, I was scared to go into the dark because I had this idea that I'd never encountered death at that young age until then. So I was scared to go anywhere. And then my dad told me, and it makes me laugh and it settled me right down. I don't know why, and it still does, that when he was a kid, obviously it's been an Irish Catholic thing, and his uncle died, and living in a small house in Townhead, a room and kitchen. So they were they had the coffin and they had the dead body lying there. So they were stuck for room. So he had to go in and sleep in with the coffin. You know what I mean? Wow. There you go, kid. And he was only young.
But you know there is a
That's part of
Buddhist
the game.
sect, and part of their ritual is you'd lie down and sleep with a corpse overnight.
Aye.
You know, to come to terms with death.
Maybe
Quite
even
amazing
my
in a way.
grannies had died. There was always somebody in the room. There was always somebody in the room with the corpse. Always.
Aye.
Even a few like that. Aye.
Mhm.
Seen both of them that as well.
Oh, I mean, they
Didn't
do
really-
that now. You
I-
can
I'd
never
only
see
ever-
it, Miriam.
I'd only ever seen it like once. My granda, used to call him my granda Bungie. So it's Donegal, but he stayed in a house in like Bellsill, and when he died, he was on the bed, right, and the family, like always, my dad's brothers and all that, and he's wanted one sister, when they were going to visit, and they were all in the room, and it was that time where I'd never seen a dead body before, and I was just sitting. But obviously Donegal and the Irish, obviously there's a wake and all that, and you do all that kind of stuff. But they were all standing, they were all praying. But I remember there was always somebody in the room. So I don't know if that's similar to what you're talking about. But I was only a pup. I was only a young kid at the time. But I remember seeing this dead body. I'm like, what is this?
They always cover the mirrors over. I think that's one thing always as well. So the reflection's not seen in the mirror.
Right,
That's like an old
I
thing,
think we
aye.
should be pains to say, but is that we're expressing the joy of life.
Yes.
All right, no, you get
Yes.
too
No, I
down on
suppose
the thing.
No,
it's
that
part
joy of life,
aye.
and as you say, life continues, and if nothing else, it continues in people's memories and people's musics and in people's writings. Because obviously, as you said, your books pay tribute to your fathers and your brothers and family, and I've no doubt, every author, people that write music at some point are keeping that spirit alive.
Yeah, and near when my dad died, one of the things that I inherited from him was quite remarkable. Near the end of his life, he'd become quite interested in genealogy and tracing like the rest of his family and finding out what happened to them and what their involvement. So, I mean, he couldn't read or write, but he would phone over to Belfast and Dublin and stuff, and they would post him over certificates and stuff like that. And so when he died, there was this folder, and he'd made a book. I mean, this guy who couldn't read or write, he stapled it all together. It was always research that he'd found, so it was birth certificates, things like that. And then he stapled a front cover to it. And the title he'd given it was amazing. It's illiterate man, and it was called Family is Forever by Thomas James Keenan. That was his book that he made. And so I referenced that, and for the good times, the superheroes are called the Forever Family.
That's right.
Aye.
It's directly references this book that I discovered that my illiterate father made. Family is Forever. That's amazing.
Oh, absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
That must have been such a beautiful moment.
Yeah. I still have it. And the other remarkable thing that he left me, and this is all pure magic, the other thing he left me, and this is mad that he would think to leave me, but he knew me so well that he knew it would appeal to me. Before he died, the last time he went into hospital, they put him in one of those cardiac things where you've got to like walk and they take your pulse and stuff like that.
Yeah.
He left me the entire printout from that thing. In other words, a map of his heart. The last map of his heart, he left that in a folder for me.
Unknown pleasures.
That's what it looks like. And in fact, what I actually wanted to do was I wanted to get a composer and I wanted to put bars over it like staves and then turn it into music, and you could have played the music in my father's heart. Do you know what I mean?
That sounds amazing.
Sounds very
It's a project I still want to do, actually.
That does sound really.
Turn it into a musical
interesting.
score, you know what I mean?
That does sound something that certainly would appeal to me.
I'm absolutely loving this chat. First of all, thank you so much for doing this.
On that, I met a wee story. My granny was orphaned, right? And she had two brothers, Pat and James. And they were at the church at the time. They're from Calton, right? So my granny's ma, would have been my granny's ma, sister, looked after her. Because I don't know what happened obviously to my great granny, it would be then, right? But she had two brothers that she didn't know. You could only contact them through the church. A PO box, right? You knew that they were there, so you could maybe send them something, or that was all a gift and stuff like that. So see, it came round one Christmas. She was she sent James. Didn't know where James was. Pat, she never got in touch with me, but James was apparently at Motherwell somewhere. But she sent bought him a mouth organ for his Christmas. What she done was she took the two screws out the side of it and put her name and address on it and screwed it back up, right, and sent it. So when James got the gift, the other side, he opens it up, they blew on it, and he's like, it's not working, you know. He opened up the two screws, next thing, he was at the door. He'd found her.
That's amazing.
And I was sitting,
That's amazing.
We were sitting at a funeral, and my man, my uncle Danny were sitting talking about, I remember, this and that. Remember how you found James and that. And they were telling me, tell me that again. You know what I mean? Just like stories are like that.
Even the fact they thought the harmonica,
That's
put it
my
inside
granny.
the harmonica.
My granny
That's
thought,
amazing.
My granny thought the
That is-
harmonica, you actually do that. You actually take the two screws out. She says, what happens? A young boy gets a harmonica, right? Like, with the blow in it, there's nothing happening. Just that, you know, take it apart. And then he turned up at the door. And he was
That's
responsible for
amazing.
taking my dad and all the rest of them want to go and see the celly after that.
Wow.
So you
Well,
go,
see, one
wow.
thing I've realised, even as a writer, and I write some pretty far out stuff, but fiction can't keep up with reality. Reality is weirder. Even when you think you've written the maddest, weirdest stuff, reality will outstrip it always. And I love that. I love that. You'll always be surprised. There's always magic. You know, you couldn't even dream up yourself, you know?
And that's it. Everybody's got stories and everybody's got stuff that's happening in their life.
Yep.
And when it comes to, like, obviously mental health and stuff like that. So my question would be, if, and it's to all of you actually, what is your go-to if you're struggling with something, as in mentally, you're really struggling with something? What's your first go-to? What do you do to relax? As in, what do you do to turn that negative emotion or situation? What would you do to turn that? How do you turn that? What's your first
want me to
go-to?
answer first, or recently there I was really very, very low, at a right low ebb, and I kind of thought, see, I've been there as if I was kind of going, I've been there, I'm looking, and I was sitting looking at a wall full of records, right, okay, and being like maybe out 8 to 4:30 working as a plumber, you know what I mean, since I've left school, right, even a day off, I feel guilty, as if I should be out working, so put that in me, maybe a dose of the like the sort of hangover fear or something like that, sitting at a low ebb, and I'd broke my ribs and I was off work and I had financial troubles. Just last year, I'm sitting looking, I'm kind of like going, when's this going to end, you know what I mean? And to be honest, my whole sort of get-go or anything like that is to get up and go, if I can, is to get up and try and be productive.
Yep.
Try and get my ass into gear. And fortunately for me, that could be as in, it might be, I've got a job that I need to go to, right, come on, or I'll need to go up and I'll need to tidy the house, something simple. I can't sit and squalor. I need to open the curtains. I need to make the bed. I need to do something. Because if I sit, that'll only make me feel even lower again, you know what I mean? Music, as I said, will no do it for me, you know?
Is that right?
It'll no do it for me at all, no. If I'm low, I've got to just kind of go, I've either got to ride out or I've got to go out. But I found recently, getting out and walking, like, and even
that's-
finding the hills
I was saying to
has
Brian,
been amazing. It's, you know, my mate Stephen Haldanger, and I'd always wanted to do like that, you know, and then I went and I done a couple, and I thought, right, that's fucking brilliant, you know, just seeing, just great, that energy, clearing the head and everything as well, and you know, and going like, hey, hold on, no, I don't need to get back to catch this or to see that programme or to do that, then like, you know, I'm actually standing top of a hill looking at this view, and I'm like, you know, a simple thing that can matter so much. And then recently my boys have got a dog as well, so obviously it's the usual with 3 boys, you take him out, so I'll now take him out, you know.
Aye.
And I'll get out with him, just myself. We got last week, we went up Meikle Bin, just out a walk, and I've actually thought about taking music with me, and I thought, that's quite rude, taking a dog out with you and wearing headphones. That's shit.
you're the
That's,
one.
no, that's no fair on the dog, you know what I mean? That's no fair. I want to know how he is. If he's got to turn and go, at me, I'm going to go, what is it? You know, I can't hear him say that. But my sort of way is like, just recently I felt that creeping in, especially like after Christmas and New Year there, where I thought, I'm no more alcohol, and who knows I had a major problem with it, right? But I just felt as though a lot of things when we get done, I need to be focused. I was setting the focus kind of, you know, out the way. I needed specs for the focus, you know what I mean? So to me, I got up one day and I was sitting, obviously kind of weaning myself, like going, right, I could walk around the Crow for a pint, and it's just the same again, or I go and ride this out, you know. And I thought, right, that's it, right, hoover out, vax all the carpets, I go back to work in a couple of days, right? Instead of sitting going, all right, great, whatever, it's not me.
No.
So it was like, up, do something, make a pot of soup, try and channel something into that, you know what I mean? That was my sort of way.
Making a pot of soup's kind of one of his abilities.
That's a classic. Total classic.
He knows he's come out a good few times. There's a pot of soup.
Always
and
a
I'm
pot of soup
usually-
to go.
They're always like, kind of like,
Love
I'm
it.
making that soup now, you know what I mean?
Aye,
Right,
that's
so,
good.
but
Yeah.
aye, that's the kind of that. I'll channel myself that
Aye.
way. Try and do that. But I'm very fortunate because I've got a son that works with me, and in the back of myself, I've got to go, no, I can't let him down. let him down loads of times where because of that, you know what I mean, with the booze and stuff like that. But it's kind of, that's a fortunate thing having a trade. I mean, I'd hate to think, right, if I've not got a trade and I've not got music, you know, to keep me busy, and I've not got this, what would it be? Unless there's poor souls out there, you know what I mean, that I feel so much for as well. And I'm no means that says, oh, I'll take pity on them, but I do look out for these people as well.
Yeah.
You know, I look out for them. I can tell, even all the way through school, if boys are getting picked on or something like that, I'd always be like that, you know, I just look and go, you know, what's this all about, you know, like, you know. So it's no, I don't mean taking pity, but I just mean, you know what I mean, like that kind of, look out for so you say a poor soul, I don't mean because they're no jumping about with the flashes of gear or anything like that. Poor souls just as in like, fucking poor soul, they're down in their luck and stuff like that, you know. Must be difficult if you're down there and you can't get up and make a pot of soup, you know what I mean? And you can get the energy
and
to
that's
do
the
it.
thing, there's a lot of people out there that they're just stuck.
Aye.
Right, they're just stuck.
Aye.
And you could, I mean, you would need to blame them for being stuck, but you can't blame them. It's just they've got themselves in a dark place. And I think when I've talked about doing the podcast and all that, my podcast was just me talking about my mental health. That's how it kicked off. And that was me just saying, right, I need to do this. I need to journal. I need to start journaling. And journaling got me out a lot of stuff.
That's really good.
But alcohol is massive, man. Alcohol's like the biggest killer in Scotland. We know that, right? Alongside suicide, right? But it's like alcohol's such a... It just seems to be the go-to for most people. And it's... If you can control it, then it's good. But there's so many people there that just can't control it. And so this, finding out about you and finding out about obviously yourselves, this is like me, that man, there's so much to talk about. There's so much to show love and the light for elsewhere.
See, that's just because you mentioned love, I jumped in there. My sort of go-to is, I've got two, I would say. One is if I have a right, you know, crappy day, especially when in my former life, which I had to leave, and I was very grateful that I managed to leave with a retirement package. But it was, you know, where's my pal red wine? You know, where is my pal vino? I'd never have a big major problem, but the trouble with that is you'll sit and you'll go, oh, that's lovely, that's magic. But the next day, you know, that's still there, isn't it? It's still, you know, you feel worse with the alcohol because it's a depressant. But for me, my go-to place is I need love. They'll know I need somebody to give me that sort of validation. I'm very lucky. And you mentioned earlier on about Andrew Weatherall and that great serenity he's got, and that, you know, the paradise syndrome that Dave Stewart for Eurythmics was talking about. I think I've got that. Obviously, I've just discovered it, and I'm, you know, humble working class guy. But my mother used to always say that I was an awful warrior, and this is true.
This is
classic.
By the way,
classic phrase.
This is true. By the way, my mother gets sent home from the Beatson because she gets sent home to be with her family, you know, to pass away. So it was me, my sister, and my dad basically living in my parents' house, and we were, you know, just helping her. So she had, you know, carers would come in, and everything was just, you know, morphine. She had 2 days subsequently. I think it was 2 days or something left in her life, but she actually said to me, lying in a bed in so much pain, she looked up at me one time, and I can't even remember because I had to leave the room. She says, Brian, you're just such an awful warrior, you know. Whenever the carers would come in or the nurses would come in to check on her, she would always say, how are you, Isabel? We'd witnessed, you know, 23 hours of awful pain and things. How are you, Isabel? And she'd go, I'm fine.
Amazing.
I'm fine. So I was, you know, giving her a bit of stick, but they just arrived at the door and I'm saying, Mum, you make sure you tell these nurses how bad you are. You're an awful warrior.
That's amazing.
She's so so true, and I don't think I there's a lot of occasions where I think sometimes you know, I am that awful warrior, and I'm very lucky that I've got, you know, a great wife. I've been married. Oh, I had to think about it. 2001, so it'll be 22 years this year. I've got two fantastic boys, you know. The eldest, Adam, I don't know if you know my youngest, Jack. So, and I've got a smashing me dog. But I think sometimes I need, you know, go and, you know, but they're living their lives now, they're enjoying. And I think that, again, plug Man v Fat, and I need to, you know, I love reading books, I love reading music, but when I think I'm really, really down, I'll need Paul, or I'll need to go and play that five-a-sides. I just need, I'm not saying I need somebody to come up and actually cuddle me and put my arm with me. I just need somebody to say, you know, are you all right? How's things? You're looking well, and what you up to? And I won't go, you know, that life's crap. I'll just go, aye, fine, usual. Yeah. You know, if I bumped into somebody, he's probably the same that I hadn't seen in 30 years, and they say, how you doing, what you up to? Just the same, how you? Aye, everything's fine. I just need that bit of talking about the banter, the company. I just need that. That's what I need, you know. And it's something like this is excellent. You know.
Aye, so listening to yourself, but you seem to have, David, you seem to have built this blueprint of yourself, right? That you can go to this blueprint as in. So I can't imagine, because through this conversation, I can't imagine you actually being down. Because you've built a blueprint, as in you've built these.
I was thinking that
these mechanisms where you're like,
which is remarkable considering he's for hairdressing.
Well, I mean, I'm going to be honest. I rarely am. I don't really suffer from, and I might have done it earlier on in my life, from depression and feeling down, but I never really suffer from that anymore at all. I feel completely fulfilled. I feel like I've lived the life that I dreamt.
It's probably because you've not got a TV.
Possible.
This could be this.
Maybe. I'll tell you another thing though. One of the big things with me is I don't identify myself with my thoughts. I don't consider the thoughts in my head to be me. Right. And I consider them that they arise and they disappear, and I don't need to take them seriously or even hold on to them. So I don't often act on my thoughts. I just see them and go, oh, there that goes, and I let it go. So I meditate every day, and my meditation is just to sit and just to watch things arise and then watch how they disappear again. And realise that everything changes. There is no stasis whatsoever. And actually, I'd go even further and I say, the thing that I learned from writing was that I had no individual existence and there was no such thing as free will. And once you kind of realise that, you just kind of chill out. Right. And you just allow and you just dig what is, as opposed to what should be. This is the big thing. And the only time the should be's are in your head. So look out at what is. And I can guarantee you, if you're ever feeling down and depressed, you're caught up in thought. Yep. Guaranteed you're caught up in thought. Yep. Well, stop thinking that thought is caught up in you. That's not the you, the secret you that's in there, the thoughts. Thoughts are good for things. Like they're good for remember what your address is, how you drive a car, did you pick up your keys, what's the passcode in your mobile phone. It's dead useful for that. But it's not useful at identifying it as you in any way whatsoever. That's just not useful, you know. And so journaling, you mentioned earlier on, no matter, writing's my greatest joy. I'm absolutely lose myself in it and I love it. But another thing that I think that writing taught me was there's a different brain. This brain of thoughts isn't the real you. You can think in a different way by externalising your thoughts and writing them down. Because you will think about things differently by articulating them than by having them stuck in your brain as well. And when you release them from the brain, you release that you-ness, that you feel that thoughts have. And you go beyond that, you know, and you step into what is, you know. I always think that's the most important thing. I always kind of, you know, that I think, therefore I am, that famous thing. I think that's absolutely nonsense. I don't go for I think, therefore I am. That's identifying with thoughts. I twist that and I say, it's kind of like Popeye. I is, therefore I is. That's what I say.
Brilliant.
You know what I mean?
See, I wonder if my trouble started when, I don't know if you can remember, do you remember the band Pele?
I do, yes, actually. Right. Yeah, I do.
Wow. From Liverpool.
I can't remember. That's quite an obscure one, actually. I
remember them.
Right. So I used to really like them, and they had a T-shirt out that I bought, and it was called, and on the back of it said, I think too much and I drink too much. You know? Yep. And, you know, so for so many years, I mean, I've got loads of tattoos, and I often wondered, should I got that tattooed on my back? Because, you know, you know, when I seen that, I bought, even then I knew, and I think it was a 19 or something, even then I knew, I'm buying that t-shirt because that's me. I think too much and I drink too much. And I think you're right. People sometimes think too much. And in the past, I thought, you know, a guy like David, you think, well, he's really successful. What's he, you know, of course he's not depressed, but I mean, I recently read the book, you know, I devour football books and all, you know, the rubbish football autobiographies that you can get through in 10 minutes. They're normal, the old juvenile junk in it, how many medals I won and, you know, all that crap. But I read the Alan Thompson one. I'd actually got it as a present for my dad.
All right, I didn't know I had the book out.
And he suffered really, really badly from depression.
Right,
after he left Celtic as a coach. You know,
okay.
This is actually quite interesting, his backstory when he was young, but he couldn't move out his bed, covered up in a fetal position every day. A lot of that was alcohol, he'd split with his wife and everything else.
I think he did suffer a good bit with that.
But there was a guy, you would think, plenty of money, good career, very successful.
I mean, I'd say I'd actually probably go far to say I know a lot of quite famous writers that you think very. I'd say the majority of them are actually unhappy and depressed and unfulfilled. And one of the big things that came up for me and I can speak as somebody who did, my dreams came true. I say that I realised my dreams. My dream was to be a writer. My dream was to write the sort of book, exactly the sort of books I wrote, and I have the success that went along with them is mind blowing to me. I dreamt that. So you get to a certain point where you realise that your wildest dreams coming true will not make you happy. This is the mad thing. You then realise that no objective experience, no thing happening outside of you will make you happy. Happiness is a decision. Happiness is something you choose to be in the face of difficulty. It's not once all difficulties have solved you can be happy, because guess what? All difficulties will never be solved. And so the trouble having great success, your dreams coming true, you can be like, I thought it would solve everything and it solves nothing in one way. But if you have a gratitude aspect and I'm like, you know, it doesn't get any better than this. What more could I have really asked for than what I have right now? Now my focus is on the small things. My focus is on meeting guys like you, hanging out and having a brilliant conversation. Then going back home and cooking dinner with my wife. And getting up in the morning and sitting by the window with a cup of tea for an hour. Or getting the fire going. Just these wee beautiful things. They're now the big things in my life. I've achieved the things I thought I had to achieve in terms of what I owed the universe. Now I can just get back to chilling. You know?
Yeah, man. I mean, we had that classic 80s for me growing up, that frame picture, among some frame pictures there, the sad clown, I think.
Yeah, of course, a classic.
Right. You know, and I can't remember who the comedian it was that said it. Maybe Billy Connolly, but he talked about how, you know, basically all comedians are all suffer from depression. And I think he said something like the 10 most, if you get the 10 most depressed people you could possibly get around a table would be the 10 most successful comedians in the entire world. And that's, you know, how they get through their life is to get that off that high for,
maybe that high, that's what they seek, that gets them, you know. And then once they're off that stage, it's like, I think looking at even like I went to see that Elvis film, the new Elvis film was great. And my ma's massive Elvis fan. I mean, but, you know, that much we could bore you with in that sense as well. But it was great. I loved it. But the thing was, my ma always said for that, he just lived for entertaining people. And once that it wasn't on that stage, that was it. It was like, you know, that was all he wanted to do, into you know what I mean? And then take that away with the goat, you know.
So that's it. If you take it away, I suppose there's so many people
that sense of it, you know what I mean, you know.
There's so many people that have got to that stage, and then I suppose then when they end their own life, for example, right? Because they feel useless to society, or they feel useless to the world. But I don't know if we're doing enough, like we were saying this, meditating, right? And actually being grateful for the small things. And that gratitude list was a thing that I always go to myself when I'm talking to people, talk to my kids even. When I'm talking to my kids, I'll say, look, just breathe, man. Let's just breathe. Let's chill. What are you grateful for?
And also the notion of service comes into that as well, especially as you get older. You realise you want to be of service to the world. And that's what I mean by gratitude. You want to give something back for all the beautiful opportunities and moments and things that you were gifted in your life, no matter what your situation is.
Yeah.
Everyone has experienced magic. Everyone has seen what the miraculous thing of being alive has glimpsed at.
Yeah.
And just to have that service is giving something back. And that's what I mean by in terms of what I've done is try to foster a sense of community among and join the dots between music and literature and people who are fans of it and things like that. And to create a little sort of service. Service has become a big thing for me as I get older, definitely. And it's tied up in being thankful.
Yeah.
Aye, that's all, doesn't it? I mean, that's the themes I always remember from, you know, when I was young, I went to a Catholic school, and what I carry still for that is those themes of, you know, that humility was always amazing. Sacrifice, but sacrifice from, you know, I think what your themes are, David, about being, you know, humble, you know, being grateful.
I don't know about humble.
People.
I don't. I'm not so sure about the humble when it comes to me in a way.
But I think you are. I think, you know, you are. You're demonstrating real humility. I think you actually demonstrate real humility by just, you know, coming in, sitting with us and just talking to us. I mean, I could be real fanboy with yourself as my favourite, but you know, I feel really comfortable in your presence because of your humility. You know what I mean?
I would say that, definitely.
What I'm most interested in is conversation, energy, exchange ideas. What does it mean to be alive? What have we all experienced? Can we have an honest conversation about it? We know how tough it is, but can we take triumph out of disaster and still find a way of saying yes together? This is what I live for. And all the other reason that this is what inspires you as a writer. Meeting other people, and not just in the content of what they say, but the rhythm, the feel, the way of being. This all feeds back into me as an artist and a writer. One of the things I always say as a writer that you need to do is always take public transport. Because you'll hear the best part ever. You know, the most amazing stories, the maddest rhythms, the way people talk. Always take public transport. Total source of inspiration every day of your life.
Yeah, I get the bus. No, what I love, you can criticise mobile phones. A lot of people criticise mobile phones. I love people on the back of a bus, up the stair, talking into their mobile phone, talking as loud as they possibly can. And the things that they reveal, they must think they're just in an isolated, empty place. And the things that you hear, you know what I mean?
Sometimes you're listening to conversations and you're like, are they actually making this up? Because there's somebody listening in. Do you know what? I'm going to go David Keenan on your ass. It's like they just make up these random stories like, what? Did they just happen? I need to write this down. Wow.
Totally.
Look, Jill, let's we've done that's 2 hours, man. It's just almost 2 hours. I can't actually believe.
Wow.
That just went. Actually, just under 2 hours. I need to end this one. First of all, thank you so much. Right? I mean, and I think this is going to be a friendship, by the way. I think I'm going to be pals with you, man. It's like, if you're all right with that, it's like, man, I want to learn more about you. And I think that's what obviously people who are going to watch this today, as they will go looking for Sonic Treasure.
The thing is, Paul, but you're like me, I want to become a friend because I want to go to south of France.
Experience paradise.
Exactly. Paradise, you know what I mean? And I need to lose loads of weight to man V-fat so I can fit in a suitcase because I don't think I could.
Plenty of hat tricks.
You know what I mean? Exactly. Because I need to fit in a suitcase out for France. But no.
But I need to say as well, I need to say thank you to a girl called Helen Cunningham, who's one of the people who was part of Green Sunrise, and she donated some money for this obviously podcast and all that as well. So there's so many people that were. So I run a football card so that I can pay for the studio cost, right? And there's so many people, and I just want to thank every single one of them for playing the football card on the Green Sunrise podcast group, which is on Facebook. But thank you for Helen as well. A special mention for Helen Cunningham. But that's all I want to say. Thank you for just now. But thank you, Joe.
Thanks for having us. Okay, it's been very interesting.
Thank you so much, mate.
Just nice and comfortable in that as well.
Yeah, it's good,
just having a catch up and a blather, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. Know? Thank you to Brian.
Thanks. Sorry, I did promise you I would bring it down, but hopefully these two guys have carried us.
No, you were brilliant.
No.
I always have a fear that I don't know if I've going to say the right things or I've got enough to say and all that. And I'm like, oh no, do you know what? And then you kind of said, well, what's the point in this? You kind of made a comment the other day and I was like, oh no, maybe Brian's the right guy to bring on. But no, thank you, mate. You're absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing.
It was really
of your knowledge. And
I've said that about everything. I'm an awful warrior.
An awful warrior. And also thank you to Paul again, Big Paul for
Paul.
For the studio.
Who's got great vinyl. We'll sort of
Great
records and vinyl.
Sitting there with earplugs in.
Thanks to that as well. But thank you so much for watching Green Sunrise Podcast. This episode with Brian Mitchell, brother Joseph.
Do we all have to do the cheer?
We'll do it in a minute. And a Scottish author, David Keenan. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you.
Nice praise
Thank
to
you.
use.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.